Nice to meet you, and thank you for having me here. Well, I'm gonna put my little clock so I don't just go over time.
Yeah.
I well, my name is Liz Hernandez, and I'm an artist from Mexico City, living in Oakland, California. I moved here in 2011 to study at the California College of the Arts, and I didn't major in fine art. I actually have a degree in industrial design, which people very shocked when I tell them that. But looking back, I don't think I would do it any other way because that major really made me realize that I'm deeply interested in materials and how to use them in unconventional ways, but also learning the stories materials can tell. And it wasn't until 2015 that I actually started making art. My now husband, Ryan Whalen, who's also an artist, he really pushed me to try painting. And
oh, wait, hold on, Liz. I'm going to stop you for a second because your sound is not great. Just for a second. And we might not be able to fix it, but let's see if we can. It's not terrible, but let's see. Try it again.
How about now?
Better? Can't tell.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's okay.
Yeah, I think it's keep going. It's totally fine. I just thought maybe we could fix it, but it's actually fine. We can understand.
It kind of sounds like a little bit like auto-tune, which is cool. So
it does.
Yeah.
It makes you sound kind of cool. Yeah. Are you on your AirPods? Do you want to try it?
Remove them?
Let's try it without, and let's just see if that helps a little bit. Sorry, as many people on this Zoom also know, I have AirPod drama on the regular.
Let's see.
Let's try that. Can you hear us?
Let me. Is that better? I'll remove them.
Let's keep going. We can understand you. Yeah, totally fine. You mostly sound like kind of like awesome.
Okay. You sure?
Yeah, I think it's
okay. Sorry about that.
Oh no.
So as I was saying, I didn't really start making work until just like 6 years ago. When my husband Ryan Whalen just pushed me to try painting. And since then, I have expanded my practice to exploring other mediums. So I'm going to share my screen now.
Yes. I can't believe you've only been making work since, what did you say, 2015?
2015.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's been kind of wild. Let's see. And let me know if you see my screen.
Yeah. Yep, we see it.
All right. Well, hope my AirPods don't do annoying stuff anymore.
No, you're fine. You're totally fine. Don't even give it a thought.
Okay. So I didn't really grow up going to galleries or art museums really, but I often visited archaeological sites and history museums. History was everywhere around Mexico City. And I just want to briefly show this image because I keep going back to it. It's a site in Mexico City that kind of shows the different stages of the city. It's the pre-Hispanic, the colonial, and the contemporary. And, you know, I don't fully have the right words to describe why I keep going back to this image, but I can sense that there's some tension in this site. You know, you can see a big public housing development surrounding the 17th century church, as well as the pyramids of the Tlatelolco. So there's this tension that this site carries that I feel very connected with. I feel like I experience it in myself and my work. Mm-hmm. But really who I really want to talk about is my grandma. I feel like every time I present about my work or every person I meet, I talk to them about my grandma, and she's my grandma Graciela. She not only raised me, but she influenced my life and my practice deeply. She's a natural storyteller, and I want to think that I inherited that from her. She's a very strong woman that's full of contradictions, and I just love her for that. For example, she's very devoted to her Catholic faith, but at the same time, she practices a lot of traditional healing rituals, and she communicates with spirits. So some of the main themes in my work, I directly inspired by her and our relationship. She has the power to inject everyday life with magic, with things that sometimes might be too strange to believe. So one of my goals with my art is to capture that moment where life is interrupted and you kind of can distinguish what's real and what's not. Like, for example, I really like the feeling when you're alone and then you think that there's something in the corner of your eye and it scares you. I'm kind of obsessed with that feeling of like, we're really not alone in the world. We don't know it all. So I'm just going to briefly go through my most recent exhibition that Ali and Christine were talking about.
We loved this show. It's amazing.
We did. It was amazing.
Thank you so much. The title of the show is Talisman. And, you know, at the beginning of 2020, I began reconnecting with a lot of the books that I used to read when I was younger. I used to read a lot of works by Latin American artists, authors, and who adopted the magical realism genre. Magical realism began in the 1930s. It was all over the world, but I think that it had a big impact in Latin American countries. But, you know, I didn't know it back then, but now I realize that my grandma really reminded me a lot of those authors and their stories. So I gravitate towards that a lot now. And, you know, when I was thinking about talking about this body of work, I was kind of having trouble writing a press release. So writing a story felt better to me because the work was so personal, and I just decided to write a story based on the pieces that I made. If you're curious to read the story, you can just open your phone and like use your camera
amazing.
To just read the story. I can also send it to Ali and Christine at the end.
Oh yeah, send it to us because we'll share it.
Yeah, if anyone gets curious. But I'm just briefly gonna talk about the work and give you a little bit of context and go through some of the pieces here. So the story is about a girl that suddenly finds her Catholic school uniform covered in burn marks, and she gets really scared. She asks her grandma for help, and she thinks that there might be an evil spirit that got into her body. They go on a journey to figure out what's going on with her, and the journey ends up being more transformative than what she expected. This is the very piece that I made for that show and kind of what inspired the rest of the story. It is a canvas that's covered in modeling paste and that has been sanded and carved out. You can see in the right image that the piece is not flat at all. It is canvas that's been shaped and covered with clay, slip, and paint.
Yeah, it's the same. I'll just cut in and say the same thing I said about Bethany's work in particular, that in reproduction, of course, it's beautiful and we get a sense of it, but there's so much tactility and surprise in the surface of these works with the clay. It's very important.
Yeah, and that's why I felt that it was really important to show that image. Because it looks like almost like a wall, like a piece of stone. That was really important to me. You know, this exhibition was really interesting because for the first time, I let the materials kind of guide the content of the pieces. I had some visions of what the show would look like in my mind. I was just thinking unglazed red clay, metal, mirrors, black and red pigment. And I kept thinking about ways to portray images that felt very spiritual, kind of like about deep inside myself. And just painting didn't feel right. So I felt like these materials were a little bit more appropriate to tell the story. And I think this piece really was inspired by a conversation I had with Ryan, where he kind of like told me you should just make these metal pieces. And I didn't really know how to cast anything in metal, but I figured out kind of like how to shape aluminum into these images that are kind of like a sketch, but also clearly a metal piece, kind of like a sculpture. And these are a couple of my very first sculptures. Before these pieces, I've never made a sculpture.
It's amazing.
And especially not one of these size. These busts kind of represent the protagonist of the story, who finds herself kind of caught between these two worlds. On one side, the world of rigidity, authority, and guilt. And on the other one, the world of freedom, magic, and spirits. And I felt like the protagonist was not really trying to belong to one world or the other. I kind of wanted to have a bridge that would connect the two worlds. So I made these sculptures that mean to represent that, kind of like bridging Again, the very spiritual free world and the one that was basically the Catholic Church.
Amazing.
The
These were
bridges,
beautiful.
Yeah.
thank you. They were so fun to make, and I made triple the amount that I show here because they all broke. And it's okay. I learned a lot through that process. But again, the bridge is not to be, it's not meant to be a one path way, but it's more like connecting the two worlds. So there's a constant back and forth. To me, the flowers kind of represent the uncontrollable force of nature and the universe, and the metal milagros are kind of charms that represent the ritual of the church. These, I don't know if you can see them in the image, but they're small round mirrors that are kind of there so you can see yourself in these pieces, just like our story's protagonists, that it's, again, kind of in between. And the pieces in the back are some of my favorites from the show. They were very difficult to make because the aluminum sheet is so fragile. I think I must have broken like 10 before I made these ones. And again, they're meant to represent the world of this temple that is one of the settings of the short story. I like to think that this metal kind of makes them look otherworldly, because it's hard to tell where these images come from, when were they made. And I just feel like the spiritual world would look like this.
Yeah,
I love these.
these are really beautiful.
Thank you. I learned this technique when I was a kid, actually. It makes me laugh because it was one of the only few assignments that I ever had, like a few art assignments, you know. We'd have to make an image of a cross or a burning heart, but in this case, I really wanted to depict souls, especially the ones that kind of linger among us and walk endlessly because they have pending issues in the material world, so they're kind of like surrounding us. And on the right side, I wanted to depict hands that heal, that pass healing energy, because I believe that touch is powerful and can heal us. And that leads me to talking about the piece that I have for the auction. It's one of the metal pieces that I shaped. This particular piece references the temple in the short story. The temple is a very particular setting because in comparison to a church, the temple is kind of nothing else but a room in a woman's house. It is modest, it is domestic, but at the same time, it's mystical, and there's a lot of power in the room. And in the story, the temple is described by the smell and taste of it. There are candles lit, there are fresh chrysanthemums, and by the taste of the holy water to drink before you enter so you can cleanse your soul. And to finish, I want to say that I don't think I'm done talking about the world of the talisman story. I really want to keep exploring that world, that narrative. So this is my continuation, kind of like what eventually happens after the story ends. I'm very excited to keep working on paper as a medium that I think I only, used once, but this is kind of like a more just immediate way of working and creating this more complicated or like narrative based images. And I'm just really stoked to be able to continue.
I am so excited about this new work, and something that I really love about the exhibition that you did at part 2, and like just so excited about the future shows you do, is they're so thoughtful. Like you take so time to really think through the new materials you want to use and explore and experiment, and all your work is connected aesthetically, but there's this like different story with each, which I find it's so fascinating. And even though it's really personal, it's these larger themes we can all relate to. I'm just so thrilled to have you in the auction. I think we lost Allie, so hopefully she'll pop back, but I know she's thrilled to have you too. So thank you so much, Liz. And I'll say to everyone who's local, definitely come see the auction work, because the piece that Liz has is just like so gorgeous in person. Yesterday we installed and I just sat in front of it and was just in awe. So, oh, Allie's back. Well, we were just
I'm
wrapping
back.
up
I'm
with
so
Liz,
sorry. I
but-
could hear you. I know I could hear the whole thing, and I'm so
good.
sorry. I made it almost all the way through. And Liz, I just want to say, I'm super excited for everyone to see it. I also want to encourage everyone to go see your new wall work mural at SF MoMA, which Janet Bishop talked about when she was on our curatorial Zoom. So there's lots of ways to come
Thank you
and
so
see
much, Eva.
your practice. Thank you so much.